At this point, you may be thinking, well, this exec command doesn't look all that useful, because if you say exec and then a command, all it does is kill the shell. And you might say, well, okay, the output redirection, maybe I can see that. And then actually, this is what exec is really useful for. So the next couple of scripts, I think you will see why we use exec. So using output redirection also allows you to write the output of scripts to files, and you can change the file that you're writing to. So you can have one shell, you don't have to redirect the output when you run the shell, because that will all be taken care of inside the shell. We have two files. This one is called whatever this shell program is, that name .out1 and .out2. And so this shell, what it does is it prints out a message saying that it'll generate two files, and it'll print out the names of the files. And so here's what you need to really pay attention to. What this does is redirect output for all commands after this point to this file 1, which is script.out1. And so you can have any number of commands, and I would encourage you to try it out. Put in a bunch of commands over here. In this case, we just have one echo statement, and so what will happen is this message will get printed out into this file. Then what we do is redirect the output to go to a different file at this point. So this would come in handy if you had a huge script and parts of the script you wanted all the commands to go to one file, and then the other parts maybe go to a different file. And then in the end, what happens is we say that, okay, now from now on, redirect output back to the console or the shell prompt. So after that, we just print out echo done, and then that shows up at the terminal. So let's take a look at this program. So here is lec12-05. It's pretty much the same thing. There might be some very slight differences. So the way to run this is to say lec1205.sh. That's it. You don't have to supply any arguments. No arguments they're not used in any way. And so what we should see is basically just this the first line. It says this script will generate two files, and it'll print out the names of the files, and then at the very end you'll see this is done. And then what you have to look at is, well, we'll take a look and see if this line of text went into our script file, whatever this is, .out1, and then we should see a second file like that. So let's try it out. Sure enough, we got a message in the very beginning saying it'll generate two files, and then it says the script is done. Now if you do ls, you will see those two output files. So let's cat them. 05.sh.out1. There it is, first part that came from this echo statement. And out2 has the second part. So once again, you might think, well, this is not that useful. You could just as well have said echo and then redirect output. Sure, we could do that. We didn't need this. But the thing is, you put one of these statements in the middle of a huge script, and everything after that will get output redirected to a file. If you want to change it back at some point, you just have to enter this one statement. So if you have 100 different commands or commands in a big loop, you don't have to redirect output for every single one of those commands. You just have to do it once, and then you're done. And then redirect output again. So this, believe me, it is pretty useful. So once you try out a few of these where you have many different commands rather than just the echo that we had, because I wanted to keep it simple. All right. We can use IO redirection in a script, that is, we can redirect input. So here you might think, well, this will kill the shell. No, it doesn't. It just says that from this point on, input has to come from this file 2. And so I will create a file 2 so that this script will run. So let's take a look at that. Cat 06. Okay, so what this script is going to do is it's going to cat something to file 1. Let's take a look at how that works. If you were to say cat F1, right, what happens is it's waiting for you to enter some text, and you enter some text, and when you're done you hit Control D. I'm going to hit Control D right now, and then you're done, right? And if you were to do an ls, you will see F1, you can cat it and it should say some text. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I'm going to remove this F1 because I don't need it. And what I did was I set up a simple file 2, which actually seems to suggest that you're going to execute commands, but actually that's not what happens. I just put this in to show you that it's not actually running this command. Okay, take a look at where this is used. Cat like 12.06. Okay, so cat, the first statement, redirects output to this file, so it'll expect us to type in some stuff because that's what cat is waiting for us to do, and we hit Control D, and then what will happen is from that point on all input will come from file 2. Well, the very next thing that we do is cat to file 3, but this time around it doesn't take any input from the keyboard because input at this point will be coming from this other file which contains these statements, and so all of this, the text will actually should go into file 3. That's what should happen. Okay, once we're done with that, we can exec less than /dev/tty, which says, okay, no longer will we take input from file 2, but let's take input back from the keyboard again, and we'll run another cat. In this case, everything we type after this point, which is after file 2 is being read in, will go into file 4. Okay, so it will wait for input in 2 points. In the very beginning, input that we type in at the keyboard will go to file 1, and at the very end, input that we type in at the keyboard will once again go to a file, in this case file 4, and then it'll print this out. So this might take a few tries, so run this. Definitely this is one of those things where you have to run it a few times to figure out all the stuff that it's doing. Okay, let's run it, and right now we are at this point. Okay, so I'm going to type in 2 lines of input. This is line 1, and I can keep going any number of lines. Line 2, and then I'm going to hit Control D because I'm tired. So Control D. Now, doesn't look like anything happened. You might think, well, maybe I didn't hit Control D. You might be tempted to try it again, but no, you don't have to. At this point, what's happened is you're saying you've executed this command, and all input is coming from file 2, and the cat command says, I'm going to take input, which is now not coming from the keyboard but from file 2, and the cat command will put it into file 3, and then once file 2 has been completely read in, we'll get input back from the keyboard, and this should go to file 4. 3. This should be it, and I hit Control D and I'm done. So I only hit Control D once after the first 2 lines, and then once again after this last 2 lines. To check and see if everything worked, let's cat file 1. So remember, the first 2 lines, because of this cat command, should go to file 1, so we should see these first 2 lines in file 1. There they are. Good. Now let's take a look at cat at file 3. File 3 should have everything that's in file 2. So it should have this complete thing. Echo, this is line 1 of file 2, including the echo. So it's not executing commands. So here you're redirecting input, that is, you're not actually executing commands. Let's see if that's what happened. File 3. Sure enough, it's exactly the same as file 2. And you can change this around, try different things. You don't have to use the echo. Take the echo out if it's confusing and try it that way. And then finally, file 4 should have these last 2 lines. And lo and behold, that's what it has. Okay, so this is one of those things where you might want to take a look at this script a few times, change things around, maybe put in echo messages right here so that you can print helpful hints to the user of this script. Okay, the last couple of things that we're going to look at is the export. So variables in a shell script are not visible to shells started inside the ancestor shell. That is, if you were to run a script inside another script, it won't be able to see variables defined in this ancestor or parent script unless you use export. So what am I talking about? Let's take a look at this. Clear. And let's take a look at lec12-6.sh. Oops. That's the one we just ran, right? I believe it is. So number 7. Okay, so it's number 7. And in this case, I do not use an export. All I do is I define a variable, I run a script, which is like 12.8, and then I say done. Okay, let's see what lec12-8 does. What all this script does is check if this variable is defined. If it's not defined, it'll print out the variable my file is, and then this will just be blank because this will be an empty string. And then it'll say lec12-08 is done. Alright, so let's try that. So we're not going to run lec12-08, we're going to run lec12-07. Okay. And so what that will do once again is it'll define a variable called myFile, it'll run lec12-8 and then say done. Over here what happens is it will check and will basically try to print out myFile. But in this case we know it won't work because we didn't export it. So let's try that. So okay, so take a look here, it says the variable myFile is and then nothing. That's because in lec12-8 we don't define myFile here in lec12-8. We try to define it over here in lec12-7, but since we did not export it, it's not seen by lec12-8. Okay, so the difference between lec12-7 and lec12-8, 9, it's very confusing. The difference between 7 and 9 is that I have an export statement. So if I run this, we get slightly different outputs. Here what I will see is I will run the same script as before, lec12-08, but remember lec12-08 tries to use this myFile variable. This time, because I have an export, this is the key, because I have an export, this time around the same script that didn't work before will now work. Sure enough, here it is. Okay, so that was the whole point of these three scripts. The first time around, 7 did not work. It called 8, but it did not work. 9, however, used the export, and as a result, it does work. It actually does print out the variable.